In my discussion, we'll go on a journey of Australia's water and irrigated agricultural development. We'll explore how we got to where we are today with the Murray-Darling Basin Plan, buybacks and market-based measures and mechanisms to manage our water rights. Finally, we'll conceptualise and forecast what the water future holds for our nation and how it will impact our agribusiness sector. But firstly, let's look at our water history. Water, along with food, was one of our first exchanged commodities in the country when, in 1770, Lieutenant James Cook recorded exchanges of water with First Nations people. Later that year, Cook claimed a new land on the eastern seaboard of Australia and referred to those lands as the new lands of New South Wales, which were to be vested in the British Crown. The remaining country was still commonly referred to at this time as New Holland and Van Diemen's Land. Fast forward over 100 years, when our developing set of colonies were being recognised as states and began debating the concept of a federation. Water was as hotly contested then as it is now, and resulted in Section 100 of our Australian Constitution, which was granted royal assent in July 1900. Section 100 of our Constitution states that the Commonwealth shall not, by any law or regulation of trade or commerce, abridge the right of a state or its residents therein to the reasonable use of the waters of rivers for conservation or irrigation. In essence, this section of our Constitution provided the responsibility of water management to our states. In 1914, an historic agreement was reached between the states of New South Wales, Victoria and South Australia. This is commonly referred to as the 1914 River Murray Agreement. This agreement addressed the development, management and cost sharing of the operation of the River Murray and set minimum monthly flows to South Australia, totalling 1,500 acre feet, or in today's measure, 1,850 gigalitres of water per annum. Industrialised innovations in water delivery and post-war infrastructure developments resulted in a steep incline to our water demands. In the 30 years between 1950 to 1980, these increased demands resulted in reductions in our water quality, disconnection of our wetlands, floodplains, and a loss of habitat and native species. While these were noticed in our regional communities, they were not widely being scientifically measured at the time. The closure, however, of the Murray Mouth for the first time in a national record required no scientific measure and brought to light that the growth in our water extraction levels were having extreme impacts to our nation's most iconic river. Debate about the establishment of a cap or limit to the quantity of extraction, sustainable extraction, commenced at this time. In 1995, an agreement by the New South Wales, Victoria and then Queensland governments was reached. This agreement introduced an immediate moratorium on any further increases in water diversions and established a process of how a long-term cap on water extraction could be achieved. In 2003, in the middle of the Millennium Drought, the Living Murray program was born. This was a joint initiative between the Australian government and the basin states to recover 500 gigalitres of water to improve the health of 8 icon sites along the River Murray. The Living Murray program involved new infrastructure, works designed to increase the environmental benefits from water, and announced decisions to involve First Nations people in the planning and management of those icon sites. Under the new Australian government powers, in 2008, we saw the first Commonwealth-led and funded water buybacks, designed to address the over-allocation of water that has historically occurred under state leadership. Under the 2007 Water Act, the Murray-Darling Basin Authority was formed, with one of its key duties to develop a plan for managing the basin's water resources. The plan aims to bring the basin back to a healthy level to support all Australians now and into the future. The plan sets out an amount of water that can be taken from the basin each year and aims to balance the requirement of our nation's food and drinking water demands while leaving enough for our rivers, lakes, wetlands and plants and animals that depend upon them. The plan is commonly referred to as the Basin Plan and was agreed to by all basin states, surprisingly enough, in 2012. The Basin Plan introduced new water accounting frameworks based on sustainable diversion limits, which set out an amount of water that can be taken from our rivers in the basin and became enforceable from 2019. Well, approximately 2,000 gigalitres of water was recovered between the years of 2008 to 2023. The Australian government, through its Productivity Commission, explored if the full recovery of water was going to occur by its legislated deadline. In short, the Commission said no, and their report explored a number of measures and actions that needed to occur to achieve the full Basin Plan water recovery of 3,200 gigalitres. So in late 2023, the current Australian government, under the leadership of Prime Minister Albanese and Federal Minister Plebiscite, passed the Water Amendment Restoring Our Rivers Act of 2023. That occurred in December. The Act made changes to the existing rules and provided the government with more time, more options and more funding, while increasing the accountability to deliver the Basin Plan in time, in full. These changes included increases to the Basin Plan delivery requirement by 3.5 years, repealing the statutory 1,500 gigalitre cap on water recovery through buybacks, strengthening the role of the Inspector General of Water Compliance, introducing new regulations on the water market, and increased funding for Aboriginal water holdings. On the 15th of July 2024, the government opened its first voluntary buyback under the new legislation. The Australian government is seeking to purchase now eligible water rights of up to 70,000 megalitres, 70 gigalitres, across 5 catchments in 14 different water trading zones in the southern Murray-Darling system, with tenders closing next week on the 11th of September. The government also announced a broader 2024-2025 trading strategy that suggests that it will soon focus on buybacks for the remainder of water rights in the Southern Connected System through an expression of interest program that will inform a 2025 buyback in Q1 and Q2 of 2025. At Waterfind, we develop and operate the National Water Index. This is a program that measures the permanent water value movements in over 200 water markets through our nation. The index affords us with the ability to generate unique insights to measure individual or group markets. The index shown here, and maybe on your phones, has tracked the movement of the water values over time, in which the Australian government is currently running their buyback in. The index represents that the entitlements in this group has grown by 10.6% compounding per annum since 2015. The index can also provide us with an insight as to one of the costs of delaying our water market reforms. Using this simple measure of compounding annual growth, it is now necessary for the Australian government and taxpayer to spend at least 2.5 times more than it would have had to do in 2015 to recover the last remaining waters in the Basin Plan. And that's if they could do it all right now, or by some way halt the growth in the value of water rights, both of which I seem to be highly unlikely. While the Waterfind analysis of the 2024 federal budget was comprehensive, we could not report on the true costs to our nation of the remaining water recovery, as the budget chose to suppress these costs on the basis of market sensitivities. That said, I've been on record estimating that the total costs of recovery for the last remaining waters over the next 3 years could be greater than all of the recovery measures that have occurred in the previous 16 years, where 2/3 of our targets were reached. So let's look now at the short-term future. For me, that's about the time it takes to get a vineyard into full production, or about 3 or 4 years. No matter if you like him or not, the late Kerry Packer's famous saying was, well, you only get one Alan Bond in your lifetime. And if Kerry Packer was here today, I would imagine he would say something like, if you're choosing to spend your precious time on fighting the water debate rather than creating a plan that uses its momentum, you've been fooled. Or maybe he would actually use stronger language than that. The government has now embarked on spending billions of dollars in finishing the basin plan water recoveries. It is also committed to do this in a very compressed time frame over the next 3 years. There are also new technologies emerging to support us to grow more with less water, and a government open for business to help you do it. For example, the Australian government's Resilient Rivers infrastructure program that commits $494 million to fund projects that improve and modernise water delivery, or the $300 million Sustainable Communities program, which aims at providing support to regional communities that may be negatively impacted by buybacks. Further opportunities may rest in the nation's future drought fund, which has been recently turbocharged with an additional $519 million. Are you hearing these numbers? They are ginormous. We're already experiencing, and will continue to experience, global shortages in our foundational and boutique food and fibre products. These shortages, I suspect, will be amplified over the coming years, mainly due to other countries not sustainably managing their water resources. This is going to occur at the same time in which our global food and fibre demands are increasing due to population growth and the rising wealth of the middle classes. We've already felt this in our nation, and it's one of the core drivers of international investment that has exploded over the last decade. This increased interest from overseas investors in our sustainable farming and water practices has had a dramatic effect to the value of Australian farmland, and I suspect will only increase over the coming years. So in conclusion, the rising wealth of Australian farmers will provide new opportunities for our sector, and the increasing federal government investments in our sector can be used to assist you to transform your businesses and to take advantage of the future. The long-term trend and the short-term trampoline is right in front of us, but it's only us that can choose if we want to step on. Thank you.